So we're going to continue looking at unit rate today using tables. Remember, unit rate is another form of saying constant of proportionality. So if you hear me say constant of proportionality, it is the same as unit rate. Let's look at how centimeters and millimeters are related and how it is related to what we have been doing recently. There is a proportional relationship between any length measured in centimeters and the same length measured in millimeters. Notice that for every 1 millimeter, it is 10, for every 1 centimeter, it is 10 millimeters. For every 2 centimeters, it's 20 centimeters. So you could say that if you multiply 1 times 10, it gives you 10 millimeters. If you multiply 2 centimeters times 10, it gives you 20 millimeters, making a proportional relationship because I can do the same thing for each number in my centimeter section. So now we want to go ahead and solve for the constant of proportionality of our first table. Okay, so usually when we see a unit rate table, there will be at least one number filled in on our y-axis. Remember, this is our x column and this is our y column. We always want to make sure to label them that way every time we do our table. So that way, once we get to our equations, we already know which numbers to plug in. But because we did our last problem, we know that for every 1 centimeter, it was 10 millimeters. So we can use that to fill in the first section in our table. Let's go ahead and go back. Okay, so like we said, for every 1 centimeter, it was 10 millimeters. So we want to go ahead and fill in the rest of our table. So if I were to do 1 times 10, it would give me 10. We want to work our way all the way down. Now, 9 times 10 would give us our next answer. Remember a little trick. From left to right, we're multiplying. And from right to left, we are dividing. So 9 times 10 would give me 90. Remember, if you don't know that by heart, you can multiply using whichever method you feel most comfortable with. You can use your calculator, you can use the long method, you can use the box method, or any other method that you like. So now we're going to continue our way down. 12 times 12.5 times 10. So if I take 12.5 times 10, what would it give me? So if I were to use my calculator, it's going to be 12.5 times 10. That would give me 125. So let me go ahead and write that in there. And because it's millimeter, I'm putting my mm at the end. Next, 50 times 10 equals, let's see, 50 times 10. 50 times 10. Let me check on my calculator. I think it's 500, but let me just double check. 50 times 10 would give me, I was right, 500 millimeters. Now I have one more left. 88.49 times 10 equals 88.49, let's see, times 10. I use my calculator. 88.49 would give me 884.9 millimeters. So our question is, what is the constant of proportionality? So basically, it's asking us, what is our unit rate? What did we use to get our answer? So our unit rate would be 10 because we used the 10 to find our answer for each problem. So let's go ahead and recap real quick. Remember, constant of proportionality and unit rate stand for the same thing. So if I say constant of proportionality, I'm talking about the unit rate. The constant of proportionality and unit rate are represented by the K or R in an equation. So like in our vocabulary words, our equation would be y equals kx, or y equals rx. So we would put our unit rate right here when we're filling out our equation. In our last table, our constant of proportionality was 10. As an equation, I'd write that like this. Let me choose a different color. I would write it as y equals 10x. So that's telling me that I'm multiplying whatever's in my x column by 10 to get whatever's in my y column, which makes sense. So let's go ahead and look at our next table. What is the constant of proportionality now? So let me think back. So I don't have anything in my y column right now, but I remember that we were looking at that ruler. So let's take a step back and go back to that ruler to see if it can help us out. So, we don't have 70, but if I had kept going, I'd have 60, I'd have 70, then here I'd have 6, and here I'd have 7. So I know that for every 70 millimeters, it's 7 centimeters. So let's go ahead and go back to our table. And I kept this over here so I wouldn't forget. So for every 70 millimeters, it was 7 centimeters. So I'm going to go ahead and erase this part over here because I don't need it anymore. But I do need to figure out how many centimeters per every 1 millimeter. So if I remember back, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take my 70 and I'm going to divide. So in order to get 1, what do I need to do? I need to divide 70 by itself. So I'm going to take 70 divided by 7. and that would give me 1. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Remember, whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. So I'm going to take 7 and I'm going to divide it by 70. Remember, when you put it in your calculator or you solve by hand, you want to make sure that you're putting it in the same way you're saying it. So if I'm going to say 7 divided by 70, I'm going to put in my calculator 7 divided by 70. It doesn't matter if the number 70 is bigger. And my answer is 0.1. So let me go ahead and put that in there, 0.1. So for every 1 millimeter, it's 0.1 centimeters. So if I take 1 and I multiply by 0.1, it gives me 0.1. Now let me just check my second one to make sure that that works. So if I take 70 and I multiply by 0.1, let's make sure it gives me 70. Because remember, I always want to check to make sure I'm doing it right. And it does. It gives me 7. So I'm going to continue doing that all the way down. So 245 times 0.1. Let's see. 245 times 0.1 gives me 24.5. Oh, and I forgot to put centimeters. Let's go ahead and check 4. 4 times 0.1 gives me 0.4 centimeters. And then the same thing for my last one. 699.1 times times 0.1 equals 69.91 centimeters. Very nice job. Okay, so now let's talk about what was our constant, oops, my writing utensil, our constant of proportionality. And I'm sorry that it's not writing very well. Our constant of proportionality for that table was 0.1. And remember, our constant of proportionality is also our unit rate. So if I were to write it as an equation, remember, our equation would look something like this or like this. And I want to fill this into the K or the R. You can use either one. So when I fill it in, it's going to be y equals 0.1 x. And that would be my equation. Good job, guys. I want you to try now.